Very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. We're broadcasting live from the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey, and as always, I'm here with my people.
Hello, Jeffrey. It's good to have you back.
Thank you so much. I miss you guys.
Yeah, we missed you too.
It was just one day, Jeffrey.
It's what it is. You know how this work is. You get it's very consuming.
Right.
So on one hand, you're trying to sort out your health. On the other hand, you're feeling sick for not coming to work. So it's
two kinds of.
But I'm happy to be back.
You can be out of the work, but you can't seem to get your head out of the work.
No, not at all. This is the work. This is what we've called. This is what we do. This is what we love to do. So sometimes it's more of a vocation than even a job, and we're grateful for that mindset.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Jeffrey.
And so it's Gratitude Tuesday, and gratitude is what multiplies what you already have. Good morning. Welcome to your perfect morning starter. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Yeah, that's my name. But it's important to start the day on a right note. That's why you see us smiling. It's really important how you start your day, because too many times your day, the tone of the day is set from where you start or by the way you start it. So we're starting off with you with a lot of information that you need. What a day was yesterday. Jeffrey, I'm sure you're excited. The rebased GDP figures are out.
Yeah.
Bukola, I'm sure you're excited too.
And I'm sure that's why Jeffrey said, I just must be at work today. I must get into those figures.
well, it's finally here. The most important thing is to see the trajectory of growth. So basically what it has done is to see how well or not how well we are doing as an economy. So I've seen the numbers from the point it was rebased in 2019. There's been that upward trend in terms of the size of our economy. Of course, we were expecting it. I did not think it's going to be less than, it's going to be around what it is. I was estimating about $300 billion. But from what we see, if you do the conversion in today's Naira versus dollar terms in terms of those quotes. So we're looking at in the neighborhood of over $200 billion. That's good for the optics as far as the economy is concerned, Bukola and Kayode. So our GDP per capita at the end of the day should have increased over $1,000. So that means that whoever is coming to invest is beginning to think that, okay, they have the capacity to buy, and we can borrow now if we want to borrow, if we choose to go that path. But there are other downsides as well. So the revenue, so tax to GDP ratio, is going to be on the backside of this.
Absolutely. So yes, the figures are out, and according to Nigeria's Statistician General Adeyemi Adeniran, it stands at 372.8 trillion naira. That's the rebased for 2024. Convert that to dollars. That's $243 billion. Almost like our call code plus 234, except that this is 243.
Yeah.
But you know the interesting thing, guys, is if the dollar or the naira to dollar wasn't 1,056, this $243 billion would have been times 2.
Yeah.
If it was the rate, it was just before, what happened. Well, this government...
That would have made us the biggest economy right now.
Exactly.
But we're still fourth with this.
Exactly. So it will have been almost about $500 billion. I mean, that shoots above the $400 billion of the African economies leading right now. So yes, they rebased it for 2019, 205 trillion naira, I believe. I have to get those figures right. Yes, and then in 2024, it's now 372.8 trillion naira. So the figures are out. Don't worry, we're going to be diving into it with our fork and knife, like basically pissing it.
We're going to chop it up.
Bukola, what do you see with those figures?
Well, as Jeffrey has said, GDP per capita is now perhaps over $1,000. But then again, as they always say about GDP, that it reveals the market and the gap. And then if it does that, what about the gap in the market? What is the reliability of this data, considering the fact that prior to this time, the CPI rebasing, the methodology for the calculation was being questioned. So what exactly, how can we rely on this data going forward, in terms of the practicality of the purchasing power parity of the population in itself? And prior to this time, if indeed, of course, there's been signals of improvement of the economy, even without the data, what about investment on ground as against, the capital that comes, briefly and then it goes out? We haven't particularly seen that in the economy, and that is really what counts. That is really what ensures employment for the youthful population, and that is what ensures that indeed their purchasing power parity increases. So I'm more concerned about the practicality of what's on ground beyond the data. But of course, I'm just a journalist, so we're going to get the economist to speak to the numbers, of course, and answer those important questions as well.
There you go. So yes, we're diving deeper into it. But you can tell the state of an economy from the way. Well, those are the figures for you. So you see how.
So this is the
GDP,
growth.
Yeah.
This is the rebased growth. So this is Q1 2025 as against Q1 2024. Now this is where we have a challenge. This is where we have a challenge. But I don't want to go into all that. The economists will break it down. But when you do year on year, that's why I'm happy to say rebase on both sides. You understand? But even when we did the CPI, for instance, there was the argument also year on year because the rebased year versus the unrebased year. So I want to assume those numbers are based on the rebased year.
Because they went all the way back to 2019,
they went all the way back to all of
trillion,
that.
and so that way it's easier to put things in
context. It's easier to compare.
Exactly.
And look at
rather than comparing figures that were gotten with one methodology with another figure that was gotten with using another methodology. It's like comparing kilometers to kg.
Past GDP rebasing, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But you can tell how well an economy is doing.
But this will send a good signal to investors, definitely, that something is up it. So for instance, the GDP per capita itself is a good signal. The economy is big. So, when you're big, you can go and approach and borrow more if you want. So, you know what I'm saying? Let's not go there.
Let's not. And that's the point we're making right now. Because, yes, the figures are out, but you can really tell the strength of an economy, just how well it is doing by the way it treats workers, by welfare to both those who are working and the ones who have retired. So it didn't really look good to see retired police officers on the streets in parts of the country yesterday, from the nation's capital and other states, protesting about welfare. And to put this in proper context, now these are men and women that were responsible for our protection. But guess what? The economy, the system, is not able to protect their welfare. And that's the irony of it. So you wonder what then becomes of the ones who are serving right now, because they're seeing people who were ahead of them protesting, and they're wondering what will become my fate. But this protest took over Abuja yesterday, and you can see them. They're meant to be resting at home, guys.
These are senior citizens. Yes. Some of them have put in 35 years. Some of them have put in maybe more or just a little less. But you can't discountenance the weight of the contribution of those decades to service. They served Nigeria, protecting you and I, and ensuring that we go to bed at night, and ensuring that indeed there is law and order on the streets of the country. But at the end of the day, when their gratuities come in, it's insignificant. Some of them describe it as undignifying of their contributions to serving their fatherland. So what is the force and perhaps the Police Service Commission doing about the urgent need to review the contributory pension scheme? Of course, we heard the Inspector General of Police say yesterday that they had been doing quite a lot about some of their grievances even prior to this protest, and that the protest would not achieve much. But perhaps would beg to disagree at this point, because the protest has indeed brought even more issues to light when you hear about the grievances of those retired servicemen yesterday. Just look at them. When you see them, even from a distance, even virtually, you can tell, their conditions of living, their state of health, which pretty much begs the question about the years of their service and the reward that they're waiting for. Coyote.
Do we have the track of the IGP?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
so let's take a listen, because the IGP then met with some of them. They had a conversation, but journalists were allowed at some point, but afterwards, the journalists had to step out for the closed door meeting. So yeah, let's take a listen to the IGP.
They gave us notice that they will be coming out today for protest, and we responded that we will welcome them, we will accommodate them. Okay? After the protest, I decided to have a meeting with them. They have been able to tell us their grievances. I've taken note of all their complaints, and many of what they are complaining about are things that we're already addressing, which they don't know. So I've been able to explain all of that to them, and I think they have a better understanding of what the issues. I don't think they will come out again tomorrow to protest.
When I hear they won't come out again, what exactly does it mean? Are they going to increase their salaries, or what exactly? Because personally, I feel that every Nigerian should join and lead this protest. The only way we can protect the persons, I've said it before, protect persons that are protecting us, is through their welfare. That's the only thank you we have. Anything less than that, we're endangering ourselves, endangering them. The big men in the police, they earn good money, but these ones who are on the road and the streets, it's just a sad tale. As you said, Bukola, when you look at them, they don't look well fed. They look like they never served our nation when you compare ours with others. So I do not know what the IGP has said that will make them not to come out. I must thank Shore and his people for leading this campaign. And I think for somebody like me, I totally support this. No policeman who is bearing arms should be paid, or no security agency at that level should be paid anything less than 250 to 300. We have to look for the money and pay them. There's no such thing that there's no money. We have to look for the money and pay them. At least if we start from there, we can now begin to make accounts. Because I was speaking to a former DPO one day, and when he told me the amount policemen earn, that's recharge card money.
And Jeffrey, you were asking whether indeed the statement by the IGP reflects a commitment to reviewing their salaries. Maybe you meant to say pension for the retirees that were protesting.
But like there are two issues:
salaries and pensions.
Exactly.
So if we went by the contributory pension scheme, which is a contribution from your salary to the scheme and from another percentage from your employer to the scheme, then perhaps those currently in service have the similar fate as these retirees, and the issues would not have been resolved. I don't want to, reveal all of the horses from our conversation already, but we're going to go right into it.
Yeah.
But that is the fate of those who are currently in service, and unless the CPS is reviewed, we may be back in another, 5 years talking about the same issues.
Okay.
So there you go. Those are the issues we'll be bringing for you on the program today. Yes, former policemen and women protest in various states against poor welfare, and of course they're also protesting for the serving officers, men and women of the police force, for better salaries, better wages, better working conditions. So we'll be speaking with one of the leaders of the protest, in fact, the man championing that protest, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, as well as the president of the Pension Fund Operators Association of Nigeria, PENOP rather, as we seek to find solutions to the issues raised.
And of course, that will not be all on the program.
Yeah, the National Bureau of Statistics.
National Bureau of Statistics, the rebasing of GDP. Good numbers, maybe not as high as we expected, but the numbers have increased from about $180-something billion now rebased to over $200 billion. We'll break it down for you, what this means for the Nigerian economy, what this means for businesses, and what this means for you. These are not just numbers. They mean something. They impact you, and will help you break it down right here on the program.
So there you have it. I think some people are happy that we're taking a break from the coalition matter politics. But guess what? The front pages might just shock you in a moment. So we'll switch gears now and bring you the front pages in a moment. Stay with us.
All right, so I think the Daily Monitor is where we will likely start from. So since we don't usually take it so much, let's start from there. It leads with a very interesting headline here. Tinubu's presidency, bad market, in quotes, won't get another term in 2027. That's credited to the PDP. Accuses the APC-led government of plunging Nigerians into economic hardship, insecurity, and hopelessness. So let's bring in our analyst, Mr. Akintobi, who is a journalist and an analyst. Mr. Akintobi, good morning and welcome to the program.
A very good morning to you and good morning to Nigeria.
So this is a statement credited to the PDP. They are saying the presidency, they've targeted bad market in their assessment. I don't know the details of what they mean. Perhaps when you look at the economy, security, the usual parameters that is used to measure each administration. In their assessment, this is bad market, and they're already predicting an end of term for President Tinubu. What do you make of it?
Well, in Nigerian colloquial parlance, bad market simply describes anything that is injurious to health, anything that is not doing well. And of course, PDP as the opposition on the back foot cannot really see anything positive about the current administration. But truth be told, there have been some gains. You talked about the economy being rebased and how the economy has grown, the GDP has grown compared to this time last year. So that's a positive. And of course, we can look at the landscape and point at a number of positives. There's a student loan program. There's the fact that we're increasing our oil production. Insecurity is being fought on all fronts. So there are some positives. I think it's quote unquote is bad belle to be calling the administration bad market, because there are some successes. That's not to say it's Uhuru yet. Clearly, there are areas that can be improved upon, and there are still so many factors that affect the quality of life of Nigerians. Inflation is still too high, the value of the naira is still too weak, unemployment is rife, insecurity pops its head up everywhere on a daily basis. Food is expensive, food items are expensive in the market. So there's still a lot of ways to go in terms of development and progress. But that's not to say it's all bad. I don't think the PDP, particularly in its current state, if the PDP is describing the Tinubu presidency as bad market, I think we should describe the PDP as on life support, and what is worse than bad market is dead market.
You came gun blazing this morning against the PDP.
I'm not even a member of the PDP, and I felt that.
That hurts, right? So this is a challenge to the PDP. Get your acts together. In fact, it's very upsetting, Ms. Akintobi, that we are in a place right now where none of the, not even the ADC itself, is totally out of the waters. And is affecting the quality of opposition we're looking forward to having. Kayode Bukola, you have the next one.
Indeed, Mr. Akintobi, you may be getting some calls from the PDP this morning. But you talked about the basket, and you said perhaps not everything out of that basket may be bad. But listen to this one. I don't know if this is good. Import, that's the Nigerian News Direct, by the way. Import, FG to reinstate 4% free on board levy, scrap 1% CISS and 7% collection. And we heard one of the lawmakers at that hearing with the customs officials of the Customs Service yesterday saying that they must stop a 7% collection from the Nigeria Customs Service and free up revenue for the federal government to plow to other areas. But this 4% free on board levy adds more to the responsibility of importers. And of course, the importers have been speaking lately and asking for a balance between revenue collection and well-being of businesses. Is this another bad part out of the APC basket of government policy?
Administration's primary methodology for raising revenue has been taxation, which in more developed economies, truth be told, taxation is the primary means of government revenue. That's the truth. Usually, anything below the ground is private property and you pay royalties to the government. That's the structure in developed economies. That's what capitalism is all about. The factors of production are in private hands, not in government hands. But our economy is anomalous, and for that reason, the oil and all the other minerals are public property. And so focus has never really been on taxation maximally as the primary source of government revenue, because there's always been an easier free flow of money coming out from the ground. So this administration from the beginning has made it its reason for existence to restructure the way government revenue is generated. And the primary way to do that is to move it to global best practices, which is taxation. And so when you see a place like the ports, I mean, the customs service, I think, is the second or third highest revenue generator for the government, I think, after oil and gas, and I think perhaps after the FIRS. I think the customs, what it brings in from the ports, from importation of goods, is critical to the functioning of the government. So they're continually looking for ways to squeeze more money out of importation. First of all, of course, to discourage importation. Secondly, of course, to, as I've said, generate revenue for the government. But also the thing about it is that the businesses that are importing things, that have to pay all of these fees, when they say 4% free on board, basically the goods that are being transported while they are in transit, there is no outstanding payment that's due. But when they get to their port of destination, then all these taxes begin to kick in. Now, the primary major importers in Nigeria have been complaining all along that they are being overtaxed, and that is having a knock-on effect on the goods that they are importing, because they pass on the cost of the levies, the taxes, onto the end user, which makes things more expensive. And at a time when the naira versus the dollar rate is really, really low, it makes imports more expensive. And we are an import-dependent economy. Nigerians are in love with imported goods. And so imports, the ports continue to be busy every day and goods keep coming in. So the NCS and the government is trying to find a balance whereby they don't suffocate the importers and the end users, but at the same time, continue to generate decent revenue for the government. So this reinstating the 4% free on board levy, they've balanced it out by scrapping a 1% levy somewhere else, a 7% collection tax. So it's a continuous juggling act to try and find a balance that works for both the importer and the consumer versus the government needs for revenue generation. So is it a good or is it a bad thing? Well, the jury is still out on that. We'll wait and see what the actual effect. See, when we're throwing out numbers, it sounds sweet. It's all theoretical. Like, look at the GDP debasing. The economy has grown by so much. But what is the actual effect? And Bukola, you spoke to that a bit earlier. What is the actual effect on the street, the man on the street, his quality of life, employment, inflation in the marketplace, a rebased economy? We are all beating our chest and crowing that the economy has grown. But in real terms, the current 70,000 minimum wage, what it can buy today, the previous 30,000 minimum wage could buy double of it. So are we better off by the fact that the minimum wage has doubled? Are we better off? So that's what I think we should focus on, is what are the substantive effects of government policy on the pocketbooks of the average Nigerian? This is theoretical. Let's see how it plays out in the coming days when the goods that are coming in begin to be impacted by this 4% free on board levy and by any other adjustments the government is trying to make.
And that is where the story is, really. And speaking of percentages, and you've talked about it earlier, Nigeria's economy records 3% growth in Q1. That's the Nigerian Tribune's lead story today. So if you look at the front page, you see that story. Yes, in terms of billion dollars, it's now $243 billion. That's our economy. Yeah, a lot of people are expecting this to make us climb to maybe second of biggest economy in Africa, but sorry. Seeing the dollar is at 1.1516. This is the best we can achieve right now.
We're number 4.
We're still number 4. But Mr. Akintobi, I don't know if you were expecting the rebased figures to bump us up to, first in Africa, because we recall the last time it was done, all of a sudden we just became first, and people are like, okay, maybe this will give us bragging rights. But I think it's a very important moment of reflection for us as a nation. So we know that it's beyond the numbers in that sense, but at least 3% growth for the economy in Q1. Hey, the government will take this, right?
Absolutely, yes. The government will take it for bragging rights as an achievement, and in truth it is. It's just that when you look at the potpourri of all the elements that align to create this growth, part of the rebasing is bringing in previously ignored sectors, online sales, telecommunications, IT, things that weren't captured before, freelance workers that weren't captured before in the economy. When you bring those things in, of course, it expands the pot. So the pot of economic activity is bigger, because they've added more things that were not captured before. But 3.13% growth in Q1 compared to Q1 in 2024, it's a decent achievement. And the only reason it hasn't propelled us to number 1, like it did several years ago, is simply because of the devaluation of the Naira. In real terms, yes, the economy has grown, but it isn't bigger than the other 3 countries, South Africa, Egypt. It's not bigger than those for now, because in dollar terms, when you convert what the GDP in Naira is based on what you said, Kayode, the 1,500 Naira exchange rate, it in dollar terms brings us to 4th position. Nonetheless, I don't think we should focus so much on position per se. I think Nigeria is at a place where globally our potential is recognized, our population, we're a very big market in all of Africa. I think we're the biggest market for goods. The economy is considered to be quite stable at this point in time. We can borrow money if we need it. And of course, that borrowing issue has always been a hot potato, because people worry about the funds that are borrowed being used for the purposes intended, and not just necessarily mortgaging our youth to our youth's future. So I think it's a good thing. We shouldn't worry about the fact that it didn't leapfrog us over the other 3 countries back to number 1. I think what matters more is the fact that there is greater economic activity in Nigeria today than there was this time last year. One way or another, that will translate to benefits to Nigerians down the road.
Okay, so maybe we'll take one more, dailies, and see. Yes, I think almost literally all of them are the same thing. But let's go to the Vanguard newspaper, which is the retired policemen protesting poor pension welfare nationwide. We're going to have that expansive conversation, but we need your take. The Stone NAS, that's the National Assembly, seek exit from CPS. Protests also in Edo, Plateau, Kwara, Taraba, Cross River, as IG denies opposing exit from CPS. Mr. Akintobi.
Yeah, it's actually unconscionable that we would allow things to deteriorate to the point that our retired servicemen have to come out to the street to protest. These people went out on a daily basis and put their lives on the line for Nigeria and did their best, and now they're retired. And I think it's a sad day when they have to actually come out onto the street. I listened to the IGP yesterday, and he said they won't have to come back out again today because he has sat down and discussed with them, and they are making Why did they have to get to the point of a protest? Why? Why are we reactive as opposed to proactive in terms of the things government needs to do? Why do we wait until it gets till things grind to a halt? This issue has been on the table for ages, and the IGP cannot say he was not aware of it. The Ministry of Police Affairs can't say they weren't aware of it. The National Service Police Commission can't say they weren't aware of it. Why did they wait? Why is it that when the publicity now gets negative and people are coming out in the street and showing how destitute they are and they are fainting and they can't feed and they can't pay school fees for their children, why is it then that the IGP meets with them to now say, okay, we'll look at your plight? I'm sure these people have been making noise about it all along, and nobody listened to them. Their cries were falling on deaf ears. And you see the same thing with ASU strikes, and you wonder, why does it have to take such a disruptive action like a strike to bring the powers that be to the table to listen to our plight? And it's especially unconscionable when it is places like the police force, the people who are charged with protection of our lives and property. And you now wonder, well, can you really blame them when they are taking 50 naira on the road from commercial vehicles when their terms and conditions of employment and retirement are so poor? I heard Jeff saying earlier that no policeman should be out there on the street earning less than 250,000. Somebody else said yesterday after this protest, I think it was Showore, that it shouldn't be any less than 500,000. Those are all just random numbers, throwaway numbers. Okay, I say it should be 2 million. Yes, I say it should be 2 million. You say 250. Somebody else say it should be 1 million or 5 million. How do we determine? The most important thing is, what does it take these people who served us and served us well with their lives? How many of them have lost their lives in the line of duty and their families are not receiving any settlement? Their children's fees are not paid. Yet they died in service of protecting us and our property. I think they should get priority. Somebody said earlier that the people they are protecting are earning more than the protectors. How, in Nigerian balance, how does that balance? How? So, yeah, so it's really a sad day, and it's not just the police. There are a group of army people from the Civil War who are still crying for their settlement, their pension, their benefits till today. From the Civil War of 1967, some veterans who fought in that war still haven't been settled. So this is a systemic problem. It's not only the police that are suffering from this, and I think it's an apathy on our part, a cultural apathy that says that once you are no longer front and center, once your issue is not directly in my face, and I don't have to attend to you now, I put you to the side and I forget about you. Well, we can't forget about the people that put their lives on the line, and the people who taught us in school, the people who protected us security-wise, the people who've served us to the best of their ability. In their old age, they should be able to live a good life, and the only way to do that is to pay them their emoluments as and when due, especially those emoluments that are not even enough for them to begin with. We now don't pay when we should pay. It's sad.
Well, you know, Mr. Akintobi, you are hitting the bullseye too many times today. You just may be getting another call from the police force. But we have maybe about 2 minutes to wrap up.
I'm not afraid.
This one is from this Nigeria. We're talking about economic activity earlier on. I'm wondering whether there is enough economic activity to push the people in the Northeast out of this current predicament. Listen to this. Food insecurity in Northeast needs urgent attention, says Red Cross. A report indicates 3.7 million persons likely to be affected as foreign aid cuts may worsen situation. Mr. Akintobi.
Yes, that situation is critical. When you look at Red Cross, Salvation Army, and all of these philanthropic agencies that deal with crises and human dislocation, they rely fully on aid, and most of that aid is foreign. And when Donald Trump rattles his saber and says he's cutting aid to Africa, and things like that, it has an effect. A spiral effect, a domino effect, down all the way down. And there have always, of course, already been problems about distribution. When aid comes in, most of it gets diverted. A good portion of it doesn't even get to the intended recipients. You remember during the COVID, we saw palliatives that were labeled as birthday gifts for legislators. So you can imagine foreign aid that includes food, blankets, various supplies, water. Most of it, a good number of it, is already caught up in corruption, diversion, all manner of shenanigans. And then when it now gets caught, it worsens the situation in such a way that we're not talking about 3.7 million people likely to be affected. These are already poor people. They are displaced people. They are people who can't fend for themselves and were totally dependent on the largesse of international donors, maybe local donors as well. And now these cuts are affecting them in a multidimensionally poor country where over 60% of the population is classified as poor. You can now imagine that these are the poorest of the poor, because the Northeast has been plagued by insecurity, been plagued by weather, been plagued by all manner of things that have made it impossible for farmers to farm and produce food. So they are reliant on this aid, and the aid is not forthcoming. I hope we don't have a humanitarian crisis on our hands coming up. I hope not.
Yeah, Mr. Dayakintobi, well said. And thank you so much for always coming through. Dayakintobi is a journalist, always helping us to make sense of the dailies each time we call on you. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure always.
All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll get to that big issue. Yes, it's a big issue, the contributory pension scheme and all the potpourri around it. First, we'll talk about the pension scheme itself, pension operations itself, and then we'll talk about the protest in different shades. Right here on the program, join us again.
Welcome back. And so as we start off this morning, the best that we can do is reflect on the state of ex-servicemen who have offered their best years serving their fatherland. Of course, the protest yesterday led by journalist and activist Shuwere in defense of the rights of police retirees who are demanding, amongst other things, exit from the contributory pension scheme. But what exactly, are the defects or the problem with the contributory pension scheme? Let's have this conversation this morning with who should know. Welcome with us, President, Pension Fund Operators Association of Nigeria, Mr. Oguche Aguda, who joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Good morning, Mr. Aguda. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you too. And, first of all, I can't get out of my, mind that viral video of that retired police officer, which came through some weeks ago, where he was complaining about what he got as a credit alert for his gratuity and, of course, his pension. And he said upon, realizing what the breakdown was, 1 million naira was actually his pension, while 2 million naira was his gratuity. And that raises a lot of questions on many levels about what he was earning while he was in service. And, of course, other issues about career progression or the lack of it in the police force. I'd like you to speak to these issues for starters.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that, we stand with the police. I always say we stand with the police and we are committed to their welfare. When I drive past police officers, I always stop, ask them how they're doing, how's their pensions, because I want to feel their pulse, right? So we start with the police and the welfare. I think that's the first thing. But the second thing is to say, your pensions under the CPS is dependent on your salary, how much you earn, how much has been contributed. So that's
CPS means contributory
pension scheme. So that's very important. That's fundamental. As a matter of fact, under any pension scheme, it depends on your salary, right? So and we empathize with them. But when the police officer says they received this amount, I think that's a plus, because we need to realize that 20 years ago, they were not receiving that amount. So they are receiving it. It's constant, it's consistent. They don't have to beg or bribe to receive it. That's a plus. And that's something as a country we've moved past. If you see some of the states, one under the contributory pension scheme, the challenge they're having is that they're not even getting it. So we've moved past that, and these ones are saying they're getting it, but it's low. So we should all agree that we've passed a particular stage. So now we need to go to the second problem, which is, okay, it's not adequate for them. And that's a different conversation, which we'll get into. But key thing, we empathize with them, but to realize that what you get under the contributory pension scheme is a function of your remuneration, your salaries. If we look at the contributory pension scheme is for all federal workers and all private sector workers. Federal workers, we have workers in the central bank, NNPC, NDIC, SEC. These guys are not protesting. Why? Because their salaries are high, right? And your pensions is a function of your salary. So yes, the police are complaining, but it is really a case of how much they are paid. I actually asked them, so I had engagement with some of them, and he says he received this particular amount as pension. So I asked him, how much was your salary? And you see that it wasn't far from what he was getting. So we need to isolate the issues, remove facts from fiction, and that will help us to see how we can resolve the issues.
So it also suggests that a policeman will be in service for possibly 2 decades, and he's not being moved up on the hierarchy.
Very true.
And that reflects on what his contributory pension scheme is at the end of the day. How can this be corrected?
So this is an issue of the welfare of the police generally. We've made those representations to the police hierarchy, and it's really about how they are progressing their career. I mean, yesterday we were talking about this issue, of course, because it's topical, and we heard different stories of some people being on the same level for 20 years. You know, of course, if you're on the same level for that number of years and your salary is constant, your pension contribution is also, limited. The beauty of the contributory pension scheme is when you start working maybe in your 20s, 25 on an ideal scenario, when you are every year, maybe salary increases over a 30-year period with promotions, with increases, the money that you're contributing should be enough when you retire. But depending on where you work, and I think it's a general welfare of the police, which we need to discuss and look at.
So let's talk about that welfare of the police, which is the heart of the matter. As you've stated, we've crossed the barrier of inability to pay.
Yes.
And now we're looking at how much is being paid into the pension scheme in the first place. So give from your insider view, what does an average policeman earn? What comes as pension? Because that ratio, as you said, is what works. And what can we do to upscale it? Because something has to be done. We cannot put gun and there's something they call the real rate of return in investment. So when you make an investment, at the end of the day, when you now cash back or you get interest or whatever it is you gain from that investment, you look at what inflation is looking at, and then you compare it to know how much you have really earned, whether you really made a return. And all of this is acting on whatever it is they are earning. So let's start from how much do you think an average policeman is earning from your record? And so that will inform how much contribution is coming in. And then how much would that come to in 30 years now of service?
Yeah, so I think typically, with the federal civil service, you retire 60 years or 35 years of service. So we try to do
65 now. So let's put that. Only the IGP. Not only the IGP has that exception for now.
So we try to do some modeling to say, maybe average salary is 160,000. There's some information flying around there, 160,000, and your pensions is a function of your basic housing and transport, right? A percentage of that. So even that 160 is not the whole amount that is being contributed. So let's say about that, maybe about 60,000, and then 8%, which is you, the employee, is what is contributed on a monthly basis, and 10% from the employer. So in that instance that we use the 160,000 and maybe about 50,000 with those basic housing and transport. So maybe 4,000 is contributed by you and 6,000 contributed by your employer. So maybe 10,000 a month. So that is what is contributed in your pensions account every month. And that money is meant to be invested. It's meant to be compounded and over time. So what should happen, in a normal climate is that within 3 years, your salary increases, you get promotions, those monies increase and those contributions will increase. But if it's stagnant, even though the returns are much, then your payouts will be less. One of the things we've advocated is that for the federal government or the police hierarchy to increase the contributions for the police force. So right now it's 10%. They can decide to say, well, we increase it to 20% perhaps. So that's
government should increase their own end,
yes.
Not the end of the employer.
Employee, sorry.
Employee, sorry.
So that the contributions are more. And when the contributions are more, the amount to invest is more, and the amount that will get at payout is more. So those are one of the suggestions that we've made, right?
A
It's a lot to unpack.
Yes.
I don't know if you landed on the thought you were making.
Yeah, I haven't landed, but I guess there's time. I don't know how much time we have, but
Okay, I thought you had landed. So, listen to the police, the retired police officers. You hear some of them say, I get 20,000 naira monthly as pension. I mean, people who earn minimum wage are complaining that even the minimum wage, their take home is not taking them home. Now, someone who's earning like 30% of that per month, I mean, how do you expect the person to survive? So what they're saying is we do not want to be a part of this CPS anymore. And there have been different talks about, is the CPS going the way of the defined benefit pension scheme? I mean, pre-2004 when President Olusegun Obasanjo brought in CPS. So what do you say to those who are saying, we do not want to be a part of CPS anymore? Leave us, let us be.
Yeah, so there's also a video where the IGP of police actually mentioned to say, you guys want to move to the defined benefit scheme. Do you know where you are going? Have you looked at the content of those bills? He asked that question, and it's really something to ask for them. Have they looked at the content of the bill? Have they looked at where they want to go to? So they want to go back to the defined benefit scheme. On the defined benefit scheme, your pensions is as a result of a direct debit to the Consolidated Revenue Fund, right? Meaning that every year the government will pay you from its own coffers. But what we need to realize is the Consolidated Revenue Fund is not a bottomless pit. Right now, on Wednesday, the Nigerian Medical Association have threatened strike because they say, if their demands are not met. So there's a lot that is going there. And if your pensions is based on the Consolidated Revenue Fund as they want to go to, some years we might not make much. For instance, in the first half of this year, Nigeria has missed its target by 70 million barrels. So our revenue is going down. So what happens in the year where the revenue is not going? Your pensions will not be paid because it's not funded, right? So going back to those schemes, it might seem like a good move on the face of it, but it's not fiscally sustainable. And perhaps in 1 or 2 years, there might be budgets, but in some years where there are no budgets, there's nothing paid. In addition, under that scheme, if you look at the bill that they are proposing, it says that, you must have been working for a number of years in order to receive pensions. So the board will determine who receives pension. Under this scheme, your RSA account, your retirement savings account, it's your own. It doesn't matter whether you resign. It doesn't matter whether you are court-martialed. As a matter of fact, there were some military personnel who were court-martialed and they were dismissed. Guess what? They couldn't get their pensions because the board will determine. But under this scheme, your retirement savings account is your own. You can determine how your pensions are received. It doesn't matter whether your boss likes you, your boss doesn't like you, you are court-martialed, you are dismissed. So under the CPS, there are many safeguards. What we now need to see is how do we increase that? It doesn't matter whether you move to the defined benefit scheme or the CPS. Pensions are a function of your salary. That is very important.
Now, I sort of get what you're saying,
all right,
but let's step back a bit.
All right.
I like the fact that you leaned back. The fact that it is not working for them. Right? The end justifies the means. In fact, it helps you make sense of the means. 20,000 naira monthly does not make sense. The least they should be earning as pensioners should be at least 100,000. In fact, a lot of people will frown at me saying 100,000 today in Nigeria. So they're earning 20,000 naira. Obviously, that is not right, on the one hand. Secondly, they say, this whole PENCOM and pension scheme, the CPS, is like a whole structure that takes more from us, but gives us less. So you hear some of them say, some of the employees in all the pension companies, operators, earn more than even the people who their monies are being deducted in that sense. So we're basically working for you, and I'm sure you've gotten that narrative a lot. Yeah. So that's the second point I want you to speak to. Thirdly, before the transition to the CPS meant that the monies from the defined benefit pension scheme was moved to the CPS. So at least that should improve the money in that sense. So speak to those three issues. One, they feel like they are working, doing the work, and the operators are the ones earning all of the money. Secondly, what happened to the monies they got from the defined benefits pension scheme up until this one? Thirdly, how can we improve this 20,000 naira?
Yeah, so I like the fact that we step back. And we step back when I say the contributory pension scheme, it covers all federal employees, private sector, and those in the FCT. So again, the federal employees, have we seen the central bank retirees protest? Have we seen NDIC retirees protest? Have we seen NIMASA retirees processed, it's a function of how much you are paid when you are working. So for those that might be receiving meager salaries, it's because their pensions or their pay is low. It doesn't matter what scheme you move to. It doesn't matter. That's number one. Number two is that under the contributory pension scheme, there's a minimum pension guarantee, and that is being implemented, whereby everyone is going to get a minimum pension guarantee. It doesn't matter how much is in your RSA, you will get a minimum pension guarantee. And PENCOM, last month, June, they've introduced a pension boost, meaning that all pensioners will receive an average of 40% increase, because of the investment returns that happen over the years. Some might receive more, some might receive less, but on average 40%. So those officers this month, they will receive more.
So the ones earning 20,000 will earn 28,000 now.
Well, they'll receive
because
more.
That's 40%.
Again, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of those that say they earn this, because it's individual, data protection and all of that. But what I can say is that there's going to be a minimum pension guarantee, and there's going to be a pension boost, and that's going to happen annually, such that when the investment return comes, they earn more. That's number one. Number two is that, they say maybe the staff of the pension funds are earning more than them. Again, the staff of the pension funds who are managing the pension funds, maybe they're accountants, they're lawyers, they are earning their pay. So it's really still goes back to the case of remuneration. What's the remuneration practices within the police? Again, there are accountants within the police, there are lawyers in the police. How is their pay structured among their peers in terms of in other industries? Your pensions will be a function of your pay. That's standard, right? And again, what I've said is that we need to look at pay across police and welfare generally. But in terms of the accrued rights, again, that's a big issue, because if you've worked for 30 years and you're retiring this year, it means that some part of your work life was under the defined benefit scheme. And when the transition happened, when the cutoff happened, your contributions are being made, right? And when you retire, that money is in your account. But then there's still some amount, which is an accrued rights, which was before we moved to the contributory pension scheme. And that has been an issue for years, right? But this administration, they've approved about 758 billion to clear part of that. And again, this goes back to the part that successive governments have not paid this. Why? Because they didn't have the money for it, right? So if we are going to move the whole pension liability to the government, when the government couldn't even pay some portion of that, it's going to cost a financial Armageddon, really, in terms of sustainability. And what I want to say is that, in the US, for instance, they have a congressional budget office. If they're going to pass a bill, they have to look at what's the sustainability of that bill. The police pension bill is not fiscally sustainable and is not implementable because...
Is it a question of fiscal sustainability or systemic prioritization?
Yeah.
Because you gave an analogy.
Yes.
NIMASA, Central Bank, NMPCL. Perhaps the numbers may vary, so we need to look at all the variables here. How many people are in those organizations?
Yes.
Versus how many people we have as police. But given their importance, their relevance to society, in fact, their relevance to stability and whatever it is we're discussing starts with security. So is it a question of fiscal sustainability? I hear you, or prioritization here?
Yeah, and I think that's what we need to discuss as a nation. So the police, they're about 400,000. I was looking at some of the...
Are they really about 400,000?
In terms of numbers, it's between 300,000 and 400,000. And there's a sense that we are even under police, so we need to hire more, right? If you look at some of the constitutional amendment reviews going on, and most states they go to, what's the first thing they talk about? State police, right? So they want to decentralize that. And maybe those are discussions we need to have in terms of, if we decentralize this, can the state governments pay what everybody that is working, whether in any profession, you should get a fair pay, right? So we now need to go to the discussion, what is the fair pay? How do we prioritize that? And that's a discussion that is even beyond pensions, the welfare of the police. If they are this number, are we budgeting enough for them? Again, let's not forget that the police, they generate internal revenues, right? And what some of these organizations have done is, because of the internal revenue they generate, they use it to augment the pensions of their staff. And we've also advocated to the police to engage additional benefit scheme based on the revenues they generate. And we know that the police also generates their revenues. How can they use that to augment and buffer the retirement monies of their staff? And these are some of the representations we have made and continue to make. And we think that if some of these are implemented, it will help to, buffer their retirements.
You know, I've heard you say through much of this conversation, time and again, that you see retirees of the CBN protesting. Do you see the retirees of NIMASA protesting? Do you see retirees, of other government MDAs protesting? So it pretty much speaks to the fact that perhaps it's not a problem with the CPS, but a problem with the grade level of remunerations as it varies with different establishments. So to that extent, I'd like to know how we can guard the remuneration of not just the police now, but others across board, particularly the middle class, the lower middle class, against the erosion of the value of what they earn. How can that be done, especially in line with international best practices? Because inflation is a global problem. It's not just a problem peculiar to Nigeria.
Yeah, you're very right, Bukola. I mean, over the last 2 years, inflation has spiraled in Nigeria and it's affected everyone, not just the police. Like I said, the Medical Association, they're also trying to protest. University lecturers are protesting because we've seen high inflationary trends. What contributory pension schemes are meant to do is the money that is contributed is not just lying fallow, it's invested. And again, if you ask any of the police officers, if they show you their retirement payment slips, you will see that the amount they have contributed is less than the investment returns that they have gotten. So the pension funds are investing for return. And what we need to do is to see how we can invest more so that their returns beat inflation. And there's a lot that we are doing which speaks to that pension boost I spoke about. The 40% increase that they have seen across board this month is because of that investing and returns sort of outpacing inflation over time. So again, there are a number of things we are doing to ensure that we invest to outpace inflation so that when people retire, their monies are higher. So first thing, this month, that increase has seen. So anybody that is retired will see that this month and going forward, what they've received has increased. And it's probably going to be an annual exercise where we see, based on the investment returns, what can we do to increase their payout. So yes, inflation has been high over the last number of years because of a number of the reforms which have spiraled into the real economy. But as pension fund managers, administrators, we seek to see how we can increase those returns and increase the payout to retirees.
Because when you look at the pension fund assets, about 23 trillion naira. How much is it?
About 24.
It's even 24. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So it keeps doing well.
Yes.
Even the government is looking at it to see if they can take some from it. So it's only fair to say, well, if this is doing well, then the pensioners should get more from it. But I want you to speak to the shortfall that you say was approved. Has it been disbursed? Because, these are terms we need to put out there properly. Approval is one thing. In fact, budgeting is another thing.
Yeah.
But disbursement, has the money landed so that at least these people can know their own fate? So maybe Scott first will respond to that. Has it been disbursed?
No, it hasn't been. And I believe, it's waiting for approval at the National Assembly. The FEC has approved it. So we're going to issue a bond for that. And I think when that comes, there's going to be clearing a lot of the accrued rights, clearing a lot of the salary increases that happen with the accrued rights. And it will filter through to the retiree. So we're going to see a lot of that.
Okay.
So right now, the FEC has approved it. Federal Executive
But it's not been disbursed.
It hasn't been
Let's
disbursed.
manage expectations properly so people know. Secondly, these people say they do not want the CPS anymore. It's almost like the Israelites saying, we want to leave, let us go. I mean, wouldn't it be fair to say, if it's democracy, right? If majority of them say, we do not want to be a part of it anymore, isn't it fair to just let them have what they want?
I was with a former president once, and one of the questions I asked him is that, some sections of the country have said they don't want to be in this country. Why don't you let them go? It's the same question you're asking. In any system, it's just like your son coming to meet you, say, I don't want to brush my teeth. I don't want to go to school, right? Like I said, there's a Congressional Budget Office in the US to say the decisions that these people are making, how does it affect the whole economy? How does it affect our fiscal headroom, right? Where you are going, what does it? So we need to have those discussions. So they're saying they want to go back, they want to go to pension boards. And if we're honest with ourselves, we know what pension boards mean. It's not long we had the issue of the MENA scandal. pension boards are not transparent. As a matter of fact, let me tell you something. When we went for the last hearing about police pension board, and when some of the retirees came to make their representations, you know what they were saying? They were arguing on who will be on the pension board, who is going to be on that board. Those boards are not transparent. Those boards, in a sense, is like the Israelites going back to Egypt, if I will say so.
So it's not even leaving Egypt, but going back to Egypt.
No. So if you say you don't want to go to this board, well, then where are you going? Even the IGP said in a viral video, where are you guys going? You're moving from fry pan to fire.
But they're the ones that, it's just like people who want to leave APC or they want to leave Labour Party and join the coalition. Even though people have said they are leaving fry, but they said leave us alone. Maybe we prefer the fire because we've tasted the frying pan and the heat is not hitting us well. Let's go to the fire.
Well, it's not up to them. It's up to the people making the decision in terms of, it's not up to them because they signed up to work with the police.
So they should basically follow the process if they really want to leave.
Well, in terms of leaving or not, so again, I think my job is to say, these are the consequences of leaving, right? If you stay, this is the benefits of staying and the consequence of leaving. So it's just to put those, I give you life and death.
There are multi-dimensional parts to this conversation. I'm just processing it. So, talk about they don't have maybe a right to leave because they signed up to all of this. But there's a cost to all of this. Like yesterday, I can imagine the dilemma of a police officer trying to shield his colleague that has left the force, one way or the other. So police trying to stop police in that sense. There's a consequence, there's a cost to every action we take. And that's what, I know that's not your expertise, but I'd like you to speak broadly to it as well. Which is, where I'm going to with this is the fact that, let's go to the elementary part. You give him a gun. You make promises to him. And you say, serve. He commits to it. Whilst in service, his quality of life is quite low. There's a lot of politics in the force that may make him to stay 10, 15 years out of his 35 years without promotion. That dependent variable affects his pension. At the end of the day, he retires 35 years and is looking more ludicrous than even when he was in service, because now when he was in service, he was involved in some sharp practices, illegal practices of collecting bribe and all of that on the road. So that augmented for him. Now he doesn't have that leverage, as legal as that leverage is. So we need to look at the entire picture and ask the right questions so that we can get the right response. I hope you see my picture here.
No, I definitely see your picture. But what I'm saying is that it is going to be worse for them if they leave a funded scheme to a scheme that is not funded, right? So some people are complaining that I saw a viral video yesterday, I'm receiving 80,000 every month. That money comes every month. You don't need to go and meet anybody. You just get the alert. Under where they want to go, they are not sure whether it's going to come. So if someone tells you I'll receive 200,000, that you're going to pay 200,000 every month under the new scheme, you might receive it 1 month. The second month, you're going to go to a board to go and beg, to go and queue, to go and bribe. And next year, you don't know whether it's going to come. So what I'm saying is that on this scheme, it is funded. You can see it. You can feel it. And it works. At least we all agree on that. Where you want to go to is an unknown variable, is dependent on the budget of the government, which, as we have seen, is stretched. As a matter of fact, we are spending about 50% of our revenues on debt service as at today, right? And if we're going to exit the police, we need about 3.5 trillion naira. We're going to borrow more. So what happens when we borrow more to make some of these payments? Inflation goes up. Even if you have 500,000 naira in your hand, right, and inflation is at 70%, you are worse off than someone that got 80,000 and inflation is at 10%. Right? So
Sorry, Jeffrey's question about systemic prioritization earlier on is very critical. And one of your responses, I recall, is that the police also has internally generated revenue. But I look at the force and I see a lot of issues. Either it's with, their the requirements for service, or the state of their welfare. Look at police barracks, or their infrastructure. Look at police stations. They do not look good. So besides their internally generated revenue, we talk about so many loopholes in governance. How much do we need to ensure that the police pension fund that we require will be sustainable, and where can we get it from when you look at the other loopholes in government wage bill?
That's a jam question. The reason why I'm saying that is because it's multifaceted. So I'm staying on the issue of pensions. If you look at police welfare, their infrastructure, that's beyond my pay grade. But as a country, like Jeffrey has said, it's something we need to address and say, do we give people guns and pay them meager? Do we allow people to stay in service and they're on a particular grade, they're not promotions, their conditions of service are not good? And to be honest, if we have those frank conversations, yes, again, we're having topical issues. And I said, if you think you are not being appreciated where you're working, you're not getting paid well, what do?
You resign.
Yes. That's another option. Are there other options for them to go to? Are they well skilled enough to say they want to work elsewhere? These are things that we need to ask for.
Okay.
What's the employment of the whole country? If a policeman says, I've worked for 5 years and I'm not happy, can I go elsewhere? Are my skills utilized elsewhere? If people begin to leave an organization, for instance, what the organization do? It now goes and checks, okay, what are my recruitment practices? Do I need to increase my salary? Is that happening? Are the police seeing people resigning and going elsewhere? Are there other jobs? It's a holistic area. But what I want to also talk about is that under the contributory pension scheme, your retirement is in your own hands. And it does pain me when I see people say they retired, they worked for 35 years and this is what they have. It does pain me. But then I now go back to say that with the contributory pension scheme, your retirement is in your own hand because you can determine how much you want to get when you retire. For instance, you said 100,000. We can actually walk back. And you can say, if I want to retire in 5 years' time and I want to receive 100,000, how much will be my RSA? I can begin to say, if I get some bonuses, if I get some salary increases, I can put more in it.
On your own voluntarily?
Yes, voluntarily. You can put more in it. So we need to get to the place of retirement planning. Retirement planning is a big business in the West. And what I always counsel people, whether retirees or people about to retire, is don't put your retirement in the hands of a government, in the hands of your employer, in the hands of anybody. It is your own to plan. So look at your retirement savings account. How much is there? How much do I need to get to? Do I need to move to another job to get higher salaries?
So let's put facts right. Sorry, Bukola. So that we can help the police here.
Yes.
Besides resigning and leaving. So you're saying that government will contribute.
Yes.
Individual, you as the employee rather, will contribute. But on your own, you can be putting money in your pension scheme.
Yes. Yes, voluntarily.
And you are voluntary.
And it's increasing the amount and the amount you get when you retire.
Okay.
So if I were earning 100,000 and I have so many competing needs, what can I possibly add again on my own? It's clearly ongoing.
It's an ongoing. But again, it goes back to the remuneration practices of the organization. And I will always say that why are other organizations not protesting? They're under the CPS. And I think that's the key thing to take out of this. But also to say that we empathize with the police and we've been also represented with their welfare.
Absolutely. And, just to add that, knowing that we commit trillions of naira to security, it just seems like a matter of political will. If government really wanted to do it, increase pension fund for the police, they would. But we must anchor the conversation at this point. We've been talking with Mr. Oguchi Aguda, President, Pension Fund Operators Association of Nigeria. Thank you very much, sir, for coming through on this one.
Thank you for having me.
And we're not quite done yet with the conversation on ideal pension for police retirees and perhaps for every Nigerian worker. After this time out, there's more to come on that one. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
The presidential candidate of the AAC and publisher Sahara Reporters, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, joins us now on the program. Good morning, Mr. Sowore. Welcome to the program. What a long day you had yesterday. And maybe I should just start with a personal question. You put up that video that your sunglasses was snatched by a man. You called a policeman in Mufti. You said his name was Victor. First, have you gotten that back?
No, I have not gotten it back yet, but we've been able to identify the individual who snatched the glasses, and it's someone who works directly with the PPRO police. I think he was directed by the PPRO, Muyiwa Adejobi, CSP, to snatch my glasses. hoping that they can hack into the glass and take my personal footage. But we've identified the person as one Aku Victor Shemere. We did tracking. Some of our netizens did a tracking of his name and his location last night and found out exactly who he was.
I don't understand why a policeman in Mufti would take your glasses. Have you spoken with the police authority? What are they saying?
Yes, of course. I reported to all the police, senior police officers who were around. They witnessed it. And later on, a police officer who identified himself as PSO to the IG came out and requested for his photo. I gave it to him. That's Latif. They never got back to me. It was planned, so they knew who the person was that snatched the glasses. They knew the purpose for which. So one of them came back to me later privately and said, "Oh, we found out that your glasses had camera on it. So we're going to figure out why you're recording us with your glasses."
Just to show our viewers that this is the same glasses you're talking about, right?
Yes, those are AI glasses, artificial intelligence glasses that they also have recommended lens that I use for my daily activities. They help me with hearing. They help you process a lot of things around you, awareness. They help you with. You can use them to pick up phone calls and return phone calls.
I mean, Mr. Showore,
several other things that
a lot of people have these things these days, so I'm shocked. I mean, even young people, children wear these glasses, use it for their daily either content creation or even optical needs. So it's really sad to see that video and then the kind of response you're getting as well. But maybe to speak on the bigger picture for you now, this protest, you said it was going to happen. It has happened. Are you satisfied with the feedback? Do you think largely this achieved what it was meant to achieve? Because the IGP met with them yesterday. He spoke afterwards. So if you were to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of the success, what would you rate it?
It was more successful than I thought because it was historic. No police protest of any nature has ever actually gone to the police headquarters. And when we started this out, we wanted it to be a police protest that would be about police officers serving and police officers who are retired. And we started out by going to the headquarters and then also found out there are some retired police officers at National Assembly. We walked all the way, marched all the way to them, and then we marched back to the force headquarters and occupied the place for several hours. So it was very successful. I want to clarify that the meeting with the IG wasn't done by us, and it's natural because I don't recognize the IG as the IG of police. You all know my position about him. But what they did when the protest was on was they brought some senior police officers to convince a few of the protesters who are retired police officers and took them through the back to their peacekeeping hall. But if you look at the pictures they presented, just a few of them, there were over 300 pensioners yesterday who came out. Maybe they got about 7 of them and went to arrange a meeting. But that's their problem. We didn't go there to meet with the IG. We went there to present legitimate grievance about police condition of serving, and those of policemen who have retired and those who might be dead, whose payments have not been made or their families have been abandoned. It's a general struggle for better policing, and we got also unbelievably support, even though quiet, from serving police officers, despite efforts made by the police hierarchy to suppress their participation. They put a lot of barracks under lock and key. They were doing head counts. They had arrested some group admins of WhatsApp groups. And but regardless, this was a major success. And for me, it was historic that there is a combination of both civilian and police collaboration to fight for their well-being.
Yeah, Mr. Showore, one of the things we discussed with the gentleman who just left here, who understand how those numbers play out. It talks about fiscal sustainability and the demands that the policemen are making. So first, I want to know, and perhaps Nigerians want you to re-highlight some of the basic demands you are making, and in terms of sustainability. We did ask a question on prioritization as against fiscal sustainability of being able to maybe dramatically, I use that word deliberately, increase the funding of or the salaries or pension of the police.
I listened to part of his presentation, and I think he admitted that the problem arose from what the policemen are paid. I'm talking about the emoluments and salaries and allowances, and that is also our position. But you can tell that he's speaking from the pension managers' perspective, where they get all this lump sum, they reinvest. But the question to ask that gentleman, even though I see a lot of transparency about his own understanding of the issue, I have to admit, is what does he pay his staff? Is he paying them the same amount that policemen who is managing their funds are paid? If any staff of the pension office retires today, are they going to get 3 million naira or 2 million naira, 900,000 naira as the lump sum they receive after working for 35 years? Those are the legitimate questions to ask him. So if he doesn't believe that these police officers who are risking their life and limb for the entire country are getting paid enough, why are you coming on TV to defend this very paltry, meager, and almost cynical salary paid to policemen? So it's not about maths, it's not about arithmetic. This is a life and death issue for people to work for 35 years in a country, by the way, where people who barely work get paid huge sums of money. We've discussed already how much our senators get paid in a month. An average senator takes home about 30 million to 50 million naira. And a police officer who doesn't go to sleep, who will guard your borders, your houses, your parties, your children's school, and to whom you report to whenever anything happens to you, is getting paid nothing. So these investments are not just supposed to be looked at from the point of, investment based on naira and kobo. Is to look at the value that policing and general security brings onto community. And that is why the Nigerian security system is broken today. So the reason why we got involved in this is not to fight for retirees, it is to actually fight for policemen who are still serving. Our position is that no policeman should be paid less than 500,000 naira per month. And before you say, is that fiscally sustainable? You count the cost of not properly equipping, paying a policeman, and you judge that against what it will cost if you're doing the same. Now, these days, you know how much you have to pay to get Boko Haram contained just in one state. All that cost that goes to the military, that are stolen, frittered, or mismanaged, or properly spent where they claim to. If you invest that in internal policing in a year, you will get a reduction in terrorism by almost 70%. You get a reduction in kidnapping by almost 80%. You get almost zero, I say almost, not entirely zero, crime rate all over the country, because police will be equipped, motivated to do what policemen do all over the world. But you cannot leave police in this condition and expect them to protect you. That is how to judge the investment that needs to be made, not to say, if we pay them well, how are we going to sustain that? Yeah. You sustain insecurity and you know how much it costs you. You know how much an Apache helicopter costs you, so that the one that you have to buy to bomb inside of your country, instead of spending that money on policing and ensuring that you don't have to bomb within your country.
Mr. Shiwere, it was disappointing to hear about your AI glasses stolen yesterday by a police officer. I believe from what you have said, an active police officer, one of those that you're trying to help. And from what you have said so far, your commitment is still not in doubt to the cause. So if you look at it from what the IG of police said yesterday. There's no defined timeline to when this particular matter will be solved. And earlier you said you listened to our conversation with Mr. Aguda, and he also talked about the sustainability in terms of committing increased funding to police pension. So if we know that that is the reality on ground, that there is no defined timeline, what would be your next strategy in continuing to help to review this cause until something definite comes through for not just retirees, but also men of the police?
Let me tell you, just within the last time I came on your show to talk about the police protests, and now a lot has happened just because people rose up in support of the cause. And this is why I always call on Nigerians never to ignore a great cause, no matter how little you can contribute to it. And one of it is that some inspectors have not been promoted for 7 years were suddenly promoted. A lot of senior police officers were promoted yesterday. In fact, the guy who started this whole pension crisis by his video that I posted on my page on Facebook, they suddenly realized that his pension was not 2 million but 5 million. I've now paid him 5 million naira. They have increased, according to them, by 40% pensions. That's the monthly pay. So a lot has happened, but it happened because people rose up and they admitted that some of the problems that were solved in the last 2 weeks had been lingering for 10 years. So we have decided with these police officers, both retired and serving, that we will be back on August 1st if these issues are not completely resolved. We want, and we are not mincing word about it, for police officers to be well paid, better paid. This is one of the arguments people in government make whenever you ask for pay for a section of the security agency. Oh, if we pay police 500, the army will come and say, pay us. No, you look at what are your priorities? What do you want at this time? And you invest in them. Otherwise, you are not going to get the returns on your investment, which is investment in security. And another thing that we discovered in the course of this struggle is that the police force is rotting at the top. For instance, they have a the bloated number of workforce. We found out there are only 210,000 policemen, but they are paying 350,000 policemen within the system. So if you cut that corruption immediately, you'll be able to apply to those who are serving. Some of the police officers, senior police officers who are getting paid, don't even live in the country. They said they found over 40 of them, senior police officers in Canada, but they are still paying them here. So there's a lot that needs to be done, but it must also have something to do with changes within the leadership of the police, because we're not ignoring the fact that the police is still a rotten organization, that it engages in misconduct, but this is just our own way of saying, look, we're also part of the same country, we are citizens of the same country, and Nigeria cannot suddenly find a police force that works automatically for it, except it invests in proper police activities or police organization. So it also needs reorganization. You remember, maybe you didn't see the video yesterday, we also reiterated that the police IG should go. He has retired. Let fresh blood come into the system. Let's have something fundamental in terms of change, shift in terms of change. Like I said, my own explanation is for us to go and check how much it costs to buy an Apache helicopter. And let's see if we apply that to police budget or investment, we will not see the results immediately. But, again, this goes deeper down to even general leadership in the country, that if you had a leader in this country who understood these problems, they will understand that an average policeman should be concerned more about getting the body cam as opposed to stealing Ray-Ban AI glasses, because policing in Nigeria is a joke.
Mr. Showore, let's just show our viewers that moment that your glasses, your pair of glasses was snatched yesterday. We've slowed down that point where it was snatched from your eyes so Nigerians can see what it is we're talking about. So the gentleman in white, you say, policeman in Mufti. Now look at that moment there.
We want to play it again so that Nigerians will see. So watch the gentleman in white. That's the person who snatched Mr. Showore's glasses. A white traditional attire. So watch his hands move straight.
Boom.
Yeah.
Clean snatch. Well, Mr. Showore, of course, we expect that the police will do the right thing and ensure that this, because I mean, everybody had mobile phones recording, cameras recording, so I don't know why glasses
and
would be a threat.
It's significant, Kadi, just to note that the gentleman was not in uniform; he was in native attire, and just after that, he's no longer in shot. So
It's moved.
It's interesting to see, and he was. He looked like he was well intentioned from what he was doing, because he was not part of those who were, preventing the protesters from advancing. So it looked well planned.
Mr. Showore, what was going through your mind at this moment? I mean,
well, I'm very used to police tactics. I know them very well. I know that they planned this. They've been having issues with me recording police misconduct with these classes in the last 6 months. In fact, one of the reasons I was charged by the IG was that I recorded some policemen on the way to the airport who were demanding for bribes. It was part of my charges in February. So they've been actively after these guys. In fact, there was a claim, there was a discussion in one of their WhatsApp groups that was made public, where all the policemen in the group said, please, if you come across Showore, be careful. He's always had glasses with him. He has all these gadgets. You don't know where they're located. So I've used these glasses to expose a lot of police misconduct. But what they don't know is that, I'm not the only person wearing these gadgets. People carry phones, and you can imagine that somebody still captured the stealing of the glasses, regardless of how they steadily tried to carry out this action. So I'm used to it. They planned it. I believe that because we found out this person works directly with CSP who is first PPRO, and they did confess to me, one of them privately yesterday, that we found out that's the glass we've been looking for that you use in recording police misconduct. So I think they want to see if they can hack into the glass, see if I have footage there they can use, or find out what footage is in there. But the foolish thing about this, because they are technologically backward, is that most of the footage on any glass these days, any phone these days, is stored in the clouds. So if you delete one, there'll be something somewhere left.
There you go. Again, if indeed this is a policeman in Mufti, it's a big shame. Really, it is a big shame. But Mr. Showore,
at least the good news is that technology has also helped us to fish him out.
Yeah.
We know who he is now. He was tracked, and the information is out there.
There you go.
We'll make sure he doesn't get away with it, or whoever sent him.
There are court processes. If you want to really get that as evidence, there's a process, a judicial process, right? Not just like, you are
that's actually
like a pickpocket.
That's an assault. Literally.
That's an assault. It's like a pickpocket,
yes.
Pick it and then disappear. But Mr. Omoyele Showore, we have to thank you for your time. I know it was a long day for you. And is there another date for this protest?
Yes, August 1st is the next day.
Mr. Omoyele Showore, AAC presidential candidate.
Thank you very much.
And this time, make sure you protect your glasses.
Maybe have a rope to keep it.
I have enough. I have enough of these gadgets to take care of the necessary business. And we're in that era where technology is going to help us solve a lot of problems. And that's one of the things we're asking them to do: modernize the police. All the policemen, they are supposed to be wearing body cams yesterday. They're supposed to have these glasses too, because it helps to fight crime.
Thank you so much for your time. A lot to chew on, and we hope that things get better for our policemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'll take a quick break now. Don't worry, we'll show you that video again, just to get a better sense, just in case you missed it. But when we return, we'll break down the GDP figures. We'll break it down to how it really affects you in a moment. Kelvin Emmanuel joins us in a moment, so stay with us.
Welcome back. Our GDP has now been rebased. We're looking at over $200 billion in dollar terms of the size of our economy. But still places us around the top 5, but around maybe the 4th position. But what does all of this mean to the Nigerian government in terms of the macroeconomy, the businesses in Nigeria, our perception outside Nigeria, but more importantly, what does this mean to you? That's why we brought in Kelvin Emmanuel. He's an economist to help us make sense of it. Mr. Kelvin, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Good morning, Geoffrey. Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege.
So my first question will be GDP rebasing 101. Let's start from there. What does this mean?
Well, so GDP basically is like the total value of goods and services in an economy at the current prices adjusted for inflation. And up until this latest GDP rebasing exercise, Nigeria has had only 2 rebasing exercises. One that was done in 1990 and the other one that was done in 2009. It also had inflation rebasing exercise that was done in 1975, and then inflation rebasing exercise that was done. There was no inflation rebasing in 2002, but there was inflation rebasing last year for figures that I don't agree with, because if you look at the inflation rebasing and the contribution to inflation, because inflation has a major impact on GDP, gross domestic product. You see that before you had the contribution to inflation for food at 60%, energy 20%. Then NBS rebased it and said that water, gas, fuel, household expenses is going to be grouped into one, and they now come from 20%, they now come to about 15.8%, and food was reduced to 51.8%. So before, food and energy took 80% of the contribution to inflation. Now, what you've seen is that you've seen a situation where, because of the devaluation of the exchange rates, right? The fact that Nigeria could no longer operate a fixed peg of plus or minus 30 naira per day, beyond which CBN will intervene, and the currency dropped from printing of money, about 17.30 trillion naira that was printed into the economy between 2019 and 2022, and about 31 trillion naira that was injected into the economy through Ways and Means Section 38 of the CBN Act violated. You saw that you didn't have assets and reserves to back this influx of money supply. Money supply is over 100 trillion, by the way. The naira dropped significantly. The government could no longer maintain that peg where it artificially pegged the exchange rates, and then it supplied the difference to the market that was taking about $320 million per month as at 2022, early 2023, before Bola Tinubu became president. So it floated it. So the floating of the naira to where it is now automatically rebased, led to a devaluation of the GDP of Nigeria. So Nigeria's GDP went from over $500 billion to about $188 billion. So what you've seen them do, the MBS, because they have 4 methodological pillars that is used for rebasing exercise. They have what they call System for National Accounts that typically just adjusts the base year. The base year they used was 2019 because according to them, they say it was the most stable year before COVID started. They have what they call the Central Processing Classification. They have what they call the International Standard for Industrial Classification, ISIC. And then they have what they call the Supply and Use Table, SUT. These are the 4 methodologies that is used. And then when you look at the contributions and drivers of GDP growth in an economy, you look at factors like consumer spending, investments, both domestic investments, foreign investment, FPIs, non-speculative investment, FDIs, you have government spending, and then you have balance of trade, which is the difference between your exports and your imports. So when you consider the fact that in 2019, Geoffrey, in 2019, Nigeria's inflation was about 11.0%, 0.8% in 2019. Interest rate was 13.5%. Today, in 2025, Nigeria's inflation, I don't believe the MBS numbers. Nigeria's inflation is about 34%. The MBS says it's 22 point something percent. Interest rate has gone up to 27.5% because, as you adjust inflation, you also have to, as inflation goes up, you have to adjust interest rates to match with inflation to prevent capital flight. You see that in the areas, the different areas that contribute to GDP, you see industry, you see agriculture, you see services. Industry dropped from 21% to 16% as inflation went up and the Monetary Policy Committee adjusted the MPR from 13.5% to 27.5%. That's 14% increase. And as they adjusted the cash reserve ratio to reduce the money supply in the system to be able to fight inflation, they adjusted cash reserve ratio from 22.5% in 2019 to 50% today, which means that 50 kobo of every 1 naira that is deposited in the banking system is warehoused at the Central Bank of Nigeria at an interest to the banks. Okay? As they adjusted it, you can see that in real industry growth dropped from 21%, it dropped to 16%, which says basically that the real sector in Nigeria is not performing well because interest rates are at an astronomical high, inflation is high, and industries are suffering. So while banks are getting fair value gains from interest rate revaluation, which is the reason why the government apply a sin tax or windfall tax to the fair value gains of banks, the real sector in Nigeria is actually suffering and bleeding.
So, Mr. Emmanuel, you have reiterated it now that you do not believe the NBS figures, and I must have heard you say in other platforms as well that the CPI rebasing that was done ahead of this time, the methodology for the calculation was debatable because of the what you call the calculation of some other aspects of the economy, put in one particular group. So is this an academic exercise, really, in your own view? And if it is just an academic exercise, what really should be the size of the GDP and, of course, GDP per capita?
So, thank you, Bukola. The reason why GDP rebasing is done to reflect the current state or total value of the current state of goods and services in the economy. There's been changes to the economy over the last 5-10 years. There's been major changes. Okay, so if you look at the fact that GDP has gone from 188 billion to now about 253 billion. And when you multiply that by the exchange rate, it comes to about 372 trillion. What the implication of that is, basically, is that the debt to GDP ratio that measures the fiscal compliance of the government in terms of the limits for debt ceiling for government borrowing of 40%. That's the red line that the Fiscal Responsibility Commission sets. Has dropped from 51.8%, has dropped currently now to 41.1%. That's what it means. It also means that the tax to GDP ratio, which is basically like a ratio that the government uses to measure how well it is collecting taxes to be able to fund government spending, has dropped from the projection of about 13% to somewhere around 13.3%, somewhere, in my estimates, around 11.2%. Which means that the government has a lot of work to do. Now, I've said it before that one of the most consequential set of reforms we've had in Nigeria was the tax reforms that the president signed into law, recently, and that is, dramatically from January 1st, 2026, going to increase the amount of collections and improve the amount of taxes and the tax to GDP ratio of the government, and reduce the need to borrow money or tap into ways and means to finance and budget deficits. But when you look at the purchasing power parity, the GDP in PPP terms, we've done so badly. Listen, Bukola, if you look at inflation calculator, okay, £1 in 1975, the purchasing power of £1 in 1975 is what today you need £10.72 to buy. So what you needed £1 to buy in 1975 is what you need £10.72 to buy in 2025. So you can see how the UK economy has performed over the intervening period. The question we have to ask is, what £1 could buy in 1975, what can it buy today in Nigeria? It can't buy you anything. How much has the Naira dropped? And when you look at the purchasing power parity, because it is simply like your gross domestic product per capita as measured by the exchange rate and the purchasing power parity for when you compare it to other similar currencies around the world. That's what GDP in PPP terms mean. What can your Naira buy in dollar terms? Because, we are heavily dependent on imports as compared to other currencies. That's what we need to measure.
Okay.
So when you say it's an academic exercise, it is really an academic exercise, because when you look at the purchasing power of the people, we've not done very well. GDP per capita today is below $900. It's very, very poor.
Okay, Mr. Kelvin, I'm happy we brought you so that you can bring this picture as clear as it should be, so that policymakers can make their decision, because these are numbers. This will inform how they decide. Some which will score well for political, interest, but besides all of that is how it impacts the person on the street, which is what all of us advocate for. But we must thank you because of time. Kelvin Emmanuel always bringing his expertise to the issue of the economy, especially as it affects all of us. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. All right, guys.
Well, it's a very busy day in the nation's capital, Abuja. In fact, Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel is a victim of all that. That's why he couldn't join us in studio. But let's go over to the National Assembly. It's rainy. It's in Abuja right now. The gate of the National Assembly, we understand, is open with vehicular movement uninterrupted in and out of the National Assembly. Well, there's some security around the gate as always, but no protesters anywhere. For context, today is the day that Senator Natasha Akpoti-Oduah says she will resume at the Senate, even though the Senate has said, stay away, it is premature. Let us have a better sense of all of this, even though the court enrollment order has come out, but different interpretation of that court judgment. But that is the state of the National Assembly right now. Will there be some drama in the coming minutes? Well, we're live for you at the National Assembly.
Interesting.
And we've had some reactions to our conversation on the police retirees pension matter. And, some of them are quite interesting, and we should bring maybe one or two before we say our goodbyes this morning. And this one is coming from Thanks Godwin, who says, I recently lost my job in January and had to go through hell to get PENCOM to approve my data recapture and approval of 25%. That's the percentage that comes to you if you're able to prove that you're out of jobs for at least, I believe, 4 months. And you continue by saying, there's so much that needs to be corrected with the PENCOM and the PFAs. There's also a need to revisit the laws regulatory the contributory pension scheme. So it's not just for police, it's also for all category of workers. Guys.
All right, as soon as we can, we're going to bring you maybe the slides so you see it. But let me just read this very short one. Enhancement of pension is after at least, I want to be sure, or after 3 years. 3 years, I think you put that and all of that. So basically, people are actually reacting.
Oh, yes, there's a lot of reactions, I must say. I will definitely be taking some of those reactions. I see this user saying, I left banking as a manager 15 years, I was earning over ₦1 million monthly. Right now, they give me 40,000 naira monthly. waiting till I get to 60 years. So imagine, so it's not just a function of the pay. If you're earning 1 million as a banker and then you are getting...
According to this guy.
Yeah, you're getting 40,000 naira. So what about the police officers earning 150? So it's beyond just what you earn, clearly, from what we are seeing here. Lots of comments, we must say, and we'll definitely give them full value, because this is a conversation that must not be swept under the carpet. Millions of Nigerians are affected. It's not just the police that are affected. But just before we go, let's show you that video again of Mr. Moyel Shore's glasses being snatched. There should be no room for this at all.
So you can see the guy is behind the policeman, and then he's just watched. I like the slow. He stretches his hand.
Freeze on this.
I wish you can freeze on his face and just... That's his hand.
Go.
He picks it. So guys, let's go back to, let's see his face. Let's go back to seeing his face. That's his face. The camera woman has blocked. So we made him popular today on TV. So yes, let's freeze. That's the guy. So just put in a headline: the man who snatched Shore's Ray-Ban. But this is not good. It doesn't reflect well. I want to believe, and I'm praying this guy is not a policeman, but it's difficult not to believe. Because this doesn't reflect well on our institution. It's not just Showore or the man, it's the institution called the Nigerian police. But I hope he's not a policeman. But thank you.
What Mr. Showore has said, he seemed to be one of those working with the Force PRO.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and company. We appreciate you being with us. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.
We're back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
Sunrise Daily is next. I'm Kayode Okikelu. Goodbye.